This was my EE210 project in which I attempted to implement a Battleships game in Logisim using two decoders, four LEDs, an exclusive NOR gate with 8 inputs, and a D flip-flop to serve as a timing device. So if I start the simulation now, and then we can kind of see how the project is kind of designed to work. So basically, we have two players on either side of the screen that have control over each of the two buttons of the two decoders. And the objective is for player A to guess the button configuration of player B, or for player B to guess the button configuration of player A, whoever's turn it is. So essentially, while the turn light is on, then that means that you're able to change the truth value of the guess indicator. And while the turn indicator is off, that means that that's assumed that you're setting the truth values that the other player is supposed to guess, and it won't affect the value of the guess indicator. So while the truth value is on, the turn indicator is on, we can make a guess and then see that it comes up wrong. But then while the turn indicator is off for both sides, we can see that our inputs don't affect the color of the guess indicator light. And that's done basically because of the D flip-flop, because this is supposed to be a period in between rounds where player 1 sets the guess value that player B is supposed to guess, and then holds down those two buttons until player B's turn begins, so that while the player A is holding down that button from the turn indicator in between rounds, the lights are off, and then the lights will only come back on once player B correctly guesses the same configuration that player A was holding during the period that the turn indicator was off for both sides. There's some The reason why that the screen is symmetrical on both sides is because that ideally the player shouldn't be able to see the inputs values of the other player's guesses. So because of that, if the player was able to see the other player's input guesses, then that would kind of defeat the purpose of a battleship style guessing game. But if they weren't able to see the other person's guesses, then that would make sense as being able to guess what the other person put in. So that's why that the guess indicators and the turn indicators are on both sides, so that if you have like a visual barrier across this axis of symmetry here, then each player can still know whether their guess was correct and whether they're physically able to affect the value of the guess indicator when it's the turn, when it's like the guessing stage rather than the setting stage. Um, and one more thing to note about this project in the guessing stage is that while the guessing stage is enabled, both players have their turn indicators turned on, so that pressing the on-off buttons for either buttons on either side would change the truth value of the guess indicator light and basically say that the guesses on either side are not the same. It's kind of assumed that this will be kind of like a hardware type of thing, that like an honor system type of thing, that the two players will keep track of who was guessing previously and who was setting the guess previously. So if this player B was setting the guess during the last turn, then this player A will have to guess during this turn, while this turn, and then now this player has to like set the guesses of these two button configurations. And now this player has to guess what the button's configuration was. So this whole process kind of repeats over and over again for as long as the D flip flop is active, and like in storing values and switching on based on the clock input. And that's essentially it. It just continues going into the setting stage and guessing stage indefinitely, and checking whether the two inputs on either sides are correctly, or whether they're the same. It just checks that continuously while the turn indicator is on. and while the turn indicator is off, it doesn't check that because it's supposed to like be assumed that you're changing the value that the other player is supposed to guess in that period. So that's essentially it. Thank you.